Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Some
Good
of you
afternoon.
saw us already this morning, I think. Now we're going to present something that is much less interesting than the presentation you just listened to on participatory mapping. My name is Hannah.
My name is Thomas.
We work for the European Commission's Department for Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid, and we are based in Brussels and Belgium. And today we are going to talk to you about, if the colleagues put the slides on, please, European Commission's plan for the Sendai Framework implementation. So I don't know if everyone is familiar with the European Commission, but European Commission is an executive body of the European Union. So it's an independent organization that employs around 23 to 25,000 people who work across 20 different departments. There are 20 different policy departments. And the role of the European Commission is to develop and implement policies of common interest of 28 EU member states and to manage the EU budget. So if you're familiar with some departments like DG ECHO, that is our department, or DG DevCo, and so on. So there are different policy departments implementing different policies. Is anyone here, does anyone come from a governmental organization or from the government? Or from a very big organization, like 25,000 people? No? Okay, well, I think, yes? 25,000 people, okay. Much more, okay. Well, maybe this will give you an inspiration of how you can consider to implement something as abstract, in a way, as the Sendai Framework within your organization. So, why did we decide to develop an action plan? In addition to following up to our commitments of actually implementing the framework, we wanted to promote disaster risk management or the disaster risk reduction in the development and implementation of EU policies. And we also wanted to kind of strengthen disaster risk reduction in these policies. So what has been the process behind developing this action plan? So we firstly looked at the 4 priorities for action of the Sendai Framework, and then we tried to identify all policies and all activities within the European Commission, so within the EU context, that fall under these priorities for action. So we actually did a very detailed mapping analysis, what exists in the EU context that can fall under the priorities for action, that in a way can fulfill the priorities for action and therefore even the Sendai Framework. And while doing this, we applied a purely cross-sectorial approach that is kind of the share basis of disaster risk reduction Sendai Framework per se. And on this slide, you can read some of the departments or policy departments, or in a way, ministries of the European Union that we work together to do this mapping analysis and to identify the actions that fall under the 4 priorities of Sendai Framework. So we work with the agricultural people, climate change, development cooperation, security policy, economic, research, innovation, and so on. So it was really kind of a rather global exercise to include everyone and to see what we already have, where are the gaps, and how we can create a plan to implement the Sendai Framework. Thomas?
And when we were doing this work, we were also, of course, looking at the key principles of the Sendai Framework. So in our action plan, we were also developing this all-of-society approach, working with all sectors. We were developing a all-levels approach. It means that we have in our action plan action at community level, at local level, at national level, at regional level. We were also trying to have a very strong focus on the most vulnerable groups, trying to be as inclusive as possible, and also trying to look at all EU policies and bringing disaster risk reduction in all EU policies in order to have this risk-informed approach that Hannah was mentioning.
Do you want to give us an example how we did, for instance, all of society? So how did we include vulnerable groups, or how did we?
I think a good example is also looking at the new focus areas of Sendai. And you know that compared to the previous framework, Sendai is focusing on education, focusing on health, focusing on culture. So we have very practical actions on cultural heritage, on developing education programs, on developing what we call a medical corps. So we were really looking at these new areas of the Sendai framework and trying to develop concrete actions as part of our Sendai implementation.
But we also work with the civil society, for instance, that provided the feedback on things. Anyway, so by considering these kind of guiding elements, how we call them, and the mapping analysis that I just mentioned earlier, we came up with a plan that covers 4 key areas. So there, as you can see, they're not fully the 4 priorities of action of the Sendai framework because we adjusted them to the EU context. And then each of these key area includes a certain number of so-called implementing priorities, and each implementing priority includes a specific number of very concrete activities with concrete timelines and concrete outputs that we want to achieve. I will not go into the details of these activities. In the end, we have a video of one of the activities that is part of this plan, and maybe if there is time, we can show it. Otherwise, I would really suggest you can just Google European Commission Sendai Framework Action Plan, and you can download all the documents, and you can look at the specific things that we are proposing in this plan. Okay, Thomas?
And this action plan is quite long-term action plan. Actually, it's a 5 years action plan. And what we plan to do is every year to look at these activities, to review them, to add new activities. So it will be really a constant living document to look at Sendai implementation. In this work, we will also work with all stakeholders. So we work with EU member states, but we work with civil society. We work with the private sector. We have a very, very strong dialogue with civil society organizations, and we will continue to do so in implementing this Sendai action plan. And finally, what is important to us is also to be really coherent with other global challenges, with the Sustainable Development Goals, with the urban policy that was adopted in Quito, with climate change policy. So we are really working closely to see how Sendai implementation can also contribute to implementation of the global agenda. But I think, Anna, that we have a very concrete example maybe that we can showcase.
You missed one point on the advocacy. I think, so we are an organization, so in a way this is an action plan for a very big organization on how to implement Sendai Framework, and we hope that this can kind of set an example to others on how you can bring down something that is quite global in a way, and occasionally what I said in the beginning, abstract or meta, to a very practical way of finding channels to implement it at the organizational level. So that's the last point. We advocate with others, with our member states, with the other organizations, other countries, to do something similar because it can very much help in implementing this framework. Yes, we have an example of one of the activities, which is called the EU Aid Volunteers. It's a specific initiative that has an objective of supporting local capacities, development of local capacities in disaster risk reduction through certain financial support, but also through deployment of volunteers. So that activity is part of our action plan, and it falls actually under I think, yes, under the last key area. So I suggest that we look at the video, what this initiative and therefore even activity of Sendai Framework is all about. And yeah, and then we'll see if we have any time to take some questions. It's not working.
No.
Okay, well then unfortunately we cannot demonstrate this activity, but you can imagine what it is all about, or you can just Google it. How much time do we have left, Thomas? you have the.
I think we still have 5 minutes, so we are
Okay,
really
well, if there
happy
are,
to reply
yes,
to
we are happy
any
to answer
question.
any questions if you have, or to hear your comments or your experiences. Otherwise, that's it. And thank you very much. Yeah, okay, thank you.